now I want you to meet the panel, and I'd like you guys to just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are. That way, I can give my brain a rest. I actually know all your names. I haven't forgotten anybody, I promise. Laura Fredricks.
I'm Laura Fredricks. Happy to be here. I'm on the board of the Cherry Lane Theatre, happily. I think the last play I was in the 8th grade. It was called Children of the Sun, and I starred as the lead role, Jupiter. My mother said to me, I never knew you had that kind of voice, and I said, yes, I do. Anyway, I have my own consulting business. I help nonprofits and businesses raise the money they need, either for startups or for nonprofits, either take you to the next level, get significant funding. My specialty is on individuals. I know we have foundations here, and I'll get into that a little bit more. I've been doing this now internationally, a lot of work right now in Russia, Australia, New Zealand, and Belarus. The world is flatter than flat than flat. They are very quick to catch up on what we call the American model of fundraising, and there is one. And foreign countries need to raise a lot of money. The eye-opener for me is that there are a lot of American business companies that simply will not invest in foreign countries that do not take care of their people, socially, culturally, politically, and economically. And that's why Russia grabbed me, and they're very quick to bring up the social sector. So I've been doing lots of work with there. I was just out with Michael Milken doing a big panel on their economic forum, which was quite exciting. But tonight, I'm really happy to be here because I can just see questions going off in your eyes, and I know everyone wants something, but you know what we'll talk about, and I hope, is that there is structure, organization, focus in fundraising. And the big issues that I see is that people think you do good things and money will follow. We do great events and money will follow. We talk to these people and money will follow. And yes, I have branded myself, I am the ask lady. And no one gets to the ask. And so hopefully I can help you craft the kinds of things you need to know for that. But really, just if you walk away with anything tonight, for me, it's structure, organization, and focus. This is a business, whether you're doing it for nonprofit or for-profit. But asking for money is a business. It's as strict as accounting.
Where can we read your book?
Where can we read my book? Amazon.com. I have some flyers later. I didn't know where to put it out. You can get it off of my website. And just a side note, there is a book called The Ask prior to this, but it was strictly for nonprofits. And I had about 100 of all of you saying, but I can't like start my own film, and I don't have backers, and I don't have investors, and I'm like, but it's in the book, it applies. It's in the book, it applies. So I created the second book on the Ask, and if you will notice, it has Ask for Your Creative Project. So that's in there as well.
So just to clarify terminology, generally when we say fundraising, and you guys can correct me if you disagree, we usually are thinking in terms of not-for-profit. So when we do a panel called Asking for Money with Not-for-Profits Need to Learn About Fundraising, the assumption could have been that we were going to talk a lot about not-for-profit fundraising, because that's what fundraising is. When you are going after investors, we don't use, it's just a semantic thing, really. But as it turns out, we have people on this panel who are going to be able to address both sides of it, the commercial and the not-for-profit. So I think we're very blessed tonight. Speaking of blessings, Ben Cameron.
Thank you. I'm Ben Cameron. I'm the Program Director for the Arts at the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, which is currently a $1.6 billion foundation which invests about $13.5 million a year in the arts. Given the conditions of the will that Doris Duke left, we invest our money specifically in artists who work in jazz, contemporary dance, and theater, and the organizations who nourish, present, and produce those artists. That's our mandate. In my prior life, I was the Executive Director of TCG. I've been head of the theater program at the National Endowment for the Arts. I ran the charitable giving division for Target stores, or Target, as you may know it. So I've been in government philanthropy, corporate philanthropy, now private philanthropy, and to the extent any of that's interesting to you, we can talk about it. The last thing I would say, just as an intro, is everything we do at the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, we administer through intermediary peer panels. So, for example, we give $1 million a year plus to the National Dance Project. They convene artists to decide which dance companies get that money. The consequence of that is I am not involved in making individual decisions at all. So nothing you say to me can ever come back to bite you. And I say that quite frankly because I think that the grant-making exchange is quite dysfunctional. and I think there's a tendency to want to appease grant makers. It will advantage you nothing in this regard. And so I'd say this is your chance to say everything you've always wanted to say to a funder but have been afraid to verbalize. So let the games begin.
And Bruce won't listen.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can say it to me and then compliment him.
Bruce Payne.
I'm a recovering academic. I taught at Duke for 35 years in a lot of different things, including ethics and public policy and leadership. But I also ran for 10 years a program called Leadership in the Arts, which was 20 Duke students headed for careers in law, business, government, teaching, spending a semester in New York thinking outside the box, which meant 40 plays and 16 operas, and a class that was based at MoMA and was peripatetic among the galleries. And one of the things I was doing was trying to develop the long-term profound need in the arts, which is board members and contributors for the nonprofits. So I've been thinking about this problem of arts funding for a very long time. I ended up, for my sins, as executive director of the Shelley Donald Rubin Foundation. Many of you probably know the Rubin Museum down on 17th Street, but the family also has a private foundation that works about a third in arts and culture, some of it designed to support the salvation and digitization of Tibetan literature. We've spent a couple of $1 million on that project. We also do some support for the museum. We also do a lot of work in human rights and civil liberties and in education and in health. We're involved in actually a $1 million project with Baruch right now, which is an interesting collaboration between Baruch and the Rubin Museum of Art, one of the most interesting museum, artistic art museum collaborations in the country. And I'm also involved in support for opera and dance and theater, and I do a little bit of commercial theater work as well with Jack Thomas.
We're going to start with the topic that I kind of wanted to start with, and we're probably going to expand beyond that. But the thing that I was interested in looking at was, how do other sectors raise money, and how is it different from the way the arts do it? And I'm going to start with a comment, because I had a meeting today with the philanthropy department at Chase, and a lovely lady who basically said I should tell you that the thing that the other sectors do that the arts don't do is we don't demonstrate how what we do impacts the economy. We don't make a clear case for how what we do affects the economy and increases jobs and increases, just makes the economy stronger. And she says right now, for her, that's a priority. For her, the people that she represents and she has to answer to, they want to see how what we're doing affects what's going on in the world, in our economy right now. Would you guys like to respond to anything about that?
Well, I would just say that in all of the urban redevelopment projects, no one doubts that the arts have been central. And that it's easy to talk about that. It's also easy to talk about the fact that money for the arts, on the whole, goes to people who are involved in the arts, which means people who are well below the median income. But if you want to talk about the economy of the city of New York, and you should do that if you're in the arts in New York, the arts make a huge contribution here. And again, a little bit of thinking about the dimensions of your contribution, of your company's contribution, of your performance's contribution. The number of people who come to the city to see performances is huge. Far more important than the athletic business in this town, and far more important than a lot of other things. If you have a lot of foreign tourists spend 5 times as much as American tourists do on a daily basis here. There are a lot of things that it isn't too hard to find out about that tell something about the impact of the arts, and for dollar per dollar, what you do is remarkably cost effective in helping maintain the economy of a big city, which is, after all, the artistic capital of the world. And so I don't think you need to be ashamed about this question about the arts and the economy at all. It's a profound part of what we're all doing, whether we recognize it or not.
I mean, for me, what I take away from your story is, and this bears saying, funders are herds of cats, you know, literally. We're not a cooperative industry. We all have our own priorities. We all have our own different boards of directors, and we all have our own particular niches that we have to fill in that regard. And I am so blessed in where I am because Doris Duke in her will said the foundation to be established in my name must have a scientific and artistic purpose. Not may have, but must have. And the arts program at that foundation is assured in perpetuity. And so I don't have to fight that battle, even while I look at my colleagues at many foundations who are trying to pull every rabbit they can out of the hat to keep the arts on the funding agenda at all in the face of disinterested boards and a lack of a mandate that they have to keep going forward. That said, you know, when I went to Target stores from the NEA, which is where I was immediately before, and I was at the NEA during Maplethorpe and Serrano and the NEA 4, for those of you that may remember that moment, so it was a wild ride. When I got there, the Target people said to me, boy, you guys never got it, did you? And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, it's not about how good or bad you are, how right or wrong, it's your ability to speak to where your audience is listening from. And you never spoke to where Congress was listening from. And that was like a bolt of lightning. For us, we care about artists who are going to push the aesthetic envelope. And I totally get Chase cares about economic impact. We don't care about that at all. We're at the Doris Duke Foundation. When I was at Target, Target knew their typical guest, because they have guests, not customers, and this is old information, but she was a college-educated, working mother of two, median household income $54,000, average checkout at the cashier $149, and that whole program was, she had 2 kids, that whole program was family affordable, family accessible, family appropriate arts. And if you came in and met with us and didn't use the family word, or if you said, you know, we're doing an avant-garde complete piece at midnight, or we're doing something where everybody takes off their clothes, or we're the Metropolitan Opera and it's $450 a ticket, our answer was, God bless you, we wish you every success, but it's not us. And so I think really fundraising, pure and simple, is your ability to speak to where your funder is listening from. The difficulty is when you're speaking to a herd of cats. When you speak to the school board, it is about SATs, and kids do better, and discipline. And when you speak to the Chamber of Commerce, it's about economic impact. And when you speak to the social center, there's a UCLA study I used to quote all the time that said kids who have been in a play are 42% less likely to tolerate racist behavior than kids who've never been in a play before. That's what you want to talk about. And if you're talking the wrong message, it falls on deaf ears. The last thing I'll say about this is, therefore, for me, a good fundraising call is a homework done in advance, involves a certain amount of listening, and also, if you're really smart, you try to get at not what they fund, but what they're thinking about. Because funders' guidelines are the reflection of what they thought about 2 years ago, not what they're thinking about that may inform the next iteration of what they will be giving to a year from now. So the conversation really is a future, present and future, targeted to what your listener cares about.
I think institutions that do it the best are higher education. And I've been from Base University and also Temple University. And what we always did, and one thing I don't see a lot of nonprofits or looking for is quantifying what you have and quantifying what you need. And I think what you're hearing from Chase is, what's the quantifiable rate of return if I'm going to give you this amount of money?
Those almost her words.
There you go. And I know we've been through this before. And just like what Ben said, that's what one person entity may want to hear. That's what a business person may want to hear. But you go to another foundation, that might not be necessary. So you have to have a whole group of communications in your bag to know what the person wants. So obviously you have to quantify not only who you employ, but who comes through there, who has the experience, that then goes into the arts. And it's a little bit of homework, it's a little bit of whatever, but that's what they want.
And when you've spent hours and weeks and months and you've done your narrative for one fundraiser, you're not finished.
Well, you're not finished, but the also thing is you can tweak that and adapt that, because you might have individuals who come in and just say, I want to know the economic impact. If I give to my community theater, how's that going to really help everybody? And then you can use it for that. So you have different conversations and different approaches.
I do think actually the theater industry's got a peculiar problem because of the existence of the commercial industry, that a lot of people, I mean, people get museums need to raise money, and they get that hospitals need to raise money, and they sort of look at a lot of nonprofit theaters and say, yeah, but Phantom of the Opera's been running for 24 years and makes gazillions of dollars, why do you need to raise money? And so there's a peculiarity about that. I am often struck that every encounter that you have with an audience member, with a board member, is a cultivation event, whether you know it or not. And part of what I'm always interested in is how often I go in and out of theaters and no one explains to me that they're a nonprofit or why they need to raise money. You know, we used to joke at TCG that you should go in and you should do a curtain speech and you should have the lights up at half and say, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, this is all the light you paid for tonight." If you want to see the play like this and you bump the lights up to full, the difference is your charitable contribution. You know, and I say this in all seriousness, I go into the YMCA and I see their values on the wall, I see the thermometer that says this is how much we've got and this is our fundraising goal. They do everything they can every second I'm working out in the gym to help me understand why they need my support. And most of the times when I go into theater, I see the pictures of the actors that are going to be in the play, I see the play, I see the actors that are going to be in the play, and I go home, and that cultivation of my understanding, I rarely see the pictures of the school programs, I rarely see the pictures of the playwright program, I rarely see the outreach to the senior citizens. All those things you do are invisible in the nonprofit world, are invisible to me as a casual guest, and therefore is a missed cultivation opportunity. And there's just something as an industry, I think we've got a lot of opportunity.
I think we have a misunderstanding.